All right. Now, excuse me while I lay down for a second. All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Like I'd mentioned, we're going to be in the book of Daniel, Daniel chapter 6. If you would like to go ahead and be turning there. Does she need some help getting in? Hey, good morning. Daniel chapter 6 is where we are going to be. Daniel chapter 6. Last week, we got to sit in the hot seat with some folks. 3 young men with some very interesting names. Hopefully you haven't forgotten them. Shadrach, Meshach, and a billy goat. No, not a billy goat. Abednego. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And we're gonna look back and rehash some things and look back at some things that we saw there. Because what we're going to see in Daniel chapter 6 is some very similar things going on. And what we're going to notice, and hopefully the things that we will see, is that a lot of these same things are going on today. Let me ask you a question to start you out this morning. We talked about pressure last week. Do you feel pressure? Let's revisit that. Anybody feeling some pressure this morning of any kind? Pressure? All right. So we talked about those pressures, and sometimes that pressure can become so heavy and so extreme that it makes you want to run away. It makes you want to quit. It makes you want to give up. It makes you want to hide, doesn't it? Maybe it's at your job. Maybe it's at school. Maybe it's at home. It's in your relationship. Maybe it's just something within yourself. We all know that feeling. We can't get away from pressure. Whether you're 8 years old or you're 80 years old, you can't get away from pressure. Every single person has felt it. Every single person will have to deal with it. And as we talked about last week, just because we perhaps get past a certain pressure doesn't mean that another pressure is not going to come and visit us. You may be asking yourself questions like, why me? Why me, God? Why am I going through this? Why am I being tempted in this way? Why must I be tested? We're going to be talking about that this morning. And it was kind of funny because I really didn't plan to come here today. I planned to go somewhere else, but then after last week, everybody's like, so we're going to talk about Daniel and the Lion's Den next week, right? And I was like, yeah. But no, seriously, there's a lot of times when I get an opportunity to speak and I have something brought to me to challenge me. It's a gift to me. It's a blessing. And so I just want to thank you all for that. Today, we're going to be looking in the book of Daniel. And we're going to be looking at Daniel specifically. But we're also going to be taking notice, and we're really going to be looking into what happens after the lion's den. Because that's very, very important. Because today, as we continue, we're going to see something very crucial. We're going to see something very crucial is that God is bigger than every trial that we can go through. He is faithful to protect us, to sustain us, and to redeem His people. And if it never happens in this life, He has given us something far greater to look forward to. So last week, in Daniel chapter 3, we saw Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego standing up where everyone else was bowing. Now, were they being stubborn? Were they being stubborn? No, they weren't. King Nebuchadnezzar, he built this great gold statue, this golden image, and said that everyone must bow. Everyone must bow when all these musical instruments started to play. But these men were resolved to serve the Lord. They were resolved to serve the Lord. And later on in that same chapter, they made just the boldest of claims. When they were the only three that didn't bow, they were confronted, and not just by a few of the soldiers. Who was it that confronted them? The king, King Nebuchadnezzar himself. And when they were confronted by him, they said, this was powerful. It's funny how when you work on your notes, y'all ever do some studying, but it's when you actually have to present it, it hits you square between the eyes. But when he said, you need to bow or else, they said this. They said, our God will deliver us from this furnace. Our God will deliver us from this furnace, and he will even deliver us from your hands. And if that wasn't bold enough, he said, but even if he doesn't, we're going to serve the Lord. Even if he doesn't, we're still going to serve the Lord. They were committed to him. And this story wasn't just about the fire. It was about their faith. It was about their submission. It was about their trust in God, even when the outcome is uncertain. Now let's fast forward a little bit. Here we are in Daniel chapter 6. Daniel he's in a very similar situation. Now, what are some things that we know about Daniel from the beginning of the chapter? We know that he's very wise. Now, was he just a smart guy? No, he was given God-given wisdom. God gave him wisdom. This man literally thrived because of what God blessed him with. But in this case, his faith is strong. His commitment to God is unwavering. But we get to a moment here in Daniel chapter 6. We get to a moment here in Daniel chapter 6 where other people start to get involved. Other people start to get involved. And we're going to talk about that, but what we're going to see is Daniel is about to show us what it looks like to live life fearlessly. But not because of his own strength or his own abilities. It's because of the one he serves. Even when the whole world is against him, he will continue to serve the Lord. So here's the scene in Daniel chapter 6. Here's the scene in Daniel chapter 6. He is excelling in life. He is gifted. He is wise. He is able to tell other people what their dreams are about. He is literally walking with God. And King Darius notices this. And so Daniel gets promoted. He gets promoted. And everyone there sees it. All of the help, all of the assistants, all of the seconds in command, they all begin to see this. And everybody was just so happy for him. Right? No. I don't know who said that, but thank you. No. They were not happy for him. They were the exact opposite. They were mad. They were jealous. They were worried. Anybody ever watch VeggieTales? Y'all seen the episode about Daniel in the lion's den? Y'all remember that song? You know, oh no, what you gonna do? The king likes Daniel more than me and you. Oh no, what you gonna do? We gotta get him out of here. Whew. I feel like we need to put that on the screen. I loved that song, and even when the kids were watching these shows, it was just so funny because it's like, this is exactly what's happening. As cute as the song was, this is exactly what was happening. They were worried because of Daniel being promoted and seeing what Daniel was able to do. You ever had a moment in your life where you have been promoted, you have been able to take that next step up, and you can feel that jealousy being aimed towards you? It doesn't feel good, does it? It doesn't feel good. Or how about this? Have we been on the other side of this? Have you ever experienced a time in your life where you may have even a good friend that experiences something good in their lives, and for some reason it just eats at you? It just eats at you. Success in God's eyes often attracts jealousy, attention, but not necessarily approval. Think about that. Think about that. When we see someone that is just absolutely flourishing and thriving, is our first response to celebrate with them? Or is it to start comparing ourselves? Being resentful? Perhaps even plotting to bring someone down. That's what happened to Daniel. That's what happened to Daniel here. Moving on in the first 10 verses, there's a trap that is going to be set. There's a trap that's going to be set. In verse 5, it talks about, then these men, and these were the men that were gathering together to try to get rid of Daniel. They said, we shall not find any grounds for complaints against Daniel. Let's stop there. So they've even admitted, we can't find anything wrong with this guy. We're going to start making some ties here in a little bit to someone else that we've already talked about today. But doesn't this sound familiar? He did nothing wrong, but yet there's people conspiring to get rid of him. Anyway, we shall not find any grounds for complaints against this Daniel unless we find it in connection with the law of his God. So now they're simply trying to just turn things around on him and what he knows is right. These men, they're crafting a trap. They get King Darius to sign a law. It says no one can pray to any god or man except the king for 30 days, or they will be cast into the lion's den. They know Daniel prays, and they're betting that he will, even though the law says not to. What does Daniel do? Does he run? Does he compromise? Be like, you know what? I can hold off 30 days. You ever felt yourself doing that? You know what? I can handle holding off a little bit. But here we're going to see something. We're going to see that there is power in his submission. We're going to see that there is power in his submission. Daniel continues as normal. 3 times a day he prays. He doesn't hide. He doesn't compromise. He doesn't run. I want y'all to notice something in verse 10. If you're not there, go ahead and get there. Daniel is living proof that submitting to God is greater than the fear of man, the fear of laws, even the fear of consequences, in this case, the lions. Verse 10, it says, when Daniel knew that the document had been signed, he went to his house where he had windows in his upper chamber. So if he had windows, what is that implying? That people could see him. that people could see him. He had windows in his upper chamber open towards Jerusalem. He got down on his knees 3 times a day, and he prayed and gave thanks before his God, as he had done previously. We need to let this sink in. We need to think about this for a moment. That contract was signed. That law was written. But he wasn't wavering. Daniel isn't panicked. He is faithful. He trusts God fully. He continues on as he knows he needs to do. Because he knows God will deliver him, can save him, and can rescue him. But he also understands that that's his timing and his sovereignty. God is greater than any and every law, every threat, every lion. What Daniel teaches us here is it's timeless, it's priceless. When pressures of life rise, when the walls come closing in, when jealousy and hostility appear, we have a choice. We can choose fear, or we can choose faith. Submission or compromise. Panic or prayer. This is the same God that he's praying to that will do some miraculous things for him and amazing things for him when he finally gets thrown into the lion's den. This is the same God who saved Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego from being burned in the furnace. Let's not forget about what happened. They weren't just burned a little bit. It wasn't just warm in there. It says that they came out just untouched. They didn't even smell like they were burnt. This is the same God that sent Jesus here to earth, gave his only Son so that we would not perish. Gave his only Son that we would not perish. That is the God of Daniel, and that is the God that is still alive today. That is the God that we serve. Your faithfulness matters, even if the outcome isn't exactly what you want. Your obedience matters, even if it draws envy and jealousy. Your submission to God matters because it glorifies God. And God is able to do great things through that glory. Now let's go into the den. So Daniel refused to compromise. He refused to stop praying to God. And now his enemies have him trapped. They had convinced King Darius, as he signed the decree, that anyone who prayed to any god or anyone other than the king would be thrown into the lion's den. I want us to think about this for a moment. Oftentimes, especially when we tell this to the children, a lot of times you see a picture very maybe similar to this, but perhaps not even this real. But oftentimes it shows, the lions just standing there, them and Daniel are just getting along, swapping recipes, and y'all put the image there. These lions were there for one reason: to devour whoever gets thrown into that den. They were real, they were dangerous, and they were hungry. They were vicious. So let's not just think to ourselves, you know what? They were tamed from the beginning. Daniel was faithful. And here's the thing. God's people often face lion's den in our lives, where things could be dangerous. It's not a literal lion's den, but pressures and threats, being treated unfair, oppositions in relationships. This lion's den is real. The pressure is real. The impact and the consequence of being in it is real. But again, the God we serve is very real as well. And He is bigger and greater than any lion, any threat that we could ever imagine. So Daniel's thrown in. Now, this is where I want to talk about King Darius for a minute. Because if y'all will notice in this reading in chapter 6, when Daniel gets thrown into the lion's den, you don't really hear anything from him. Who does it go to? Where does the focus start to go to? It starts to go to King Darius. So in the meantime, King Darius, as Daniel is in the lion's den. King Darius has thrown Daniel into the lion's den. Darius is the most powerful man in this moment. He is the most powerful man in this moment, and he realizes what he has done. You ever had those moments in your life where you realize what you did? But he couldn't go against the law. The king wasn't above the law. To get the picture of what's going on, if you could imagine, he's sitting here pacing. He's walking around the palace late at night. He's troubled. He's frustrated. And he's desperate. He's not able to sleep. Does this not sound like something that just happened 3 chapters ago with these 3 young men? Or even before that. Here we have a king that is troubled. He couldn't undo the law. The king spent nights fasting and refusing entertainment, you name it, thinking constantly about Daniel. And we see that in verses 14 and 15. Here's where things get interesting. The sun rose. The new day starts, and Darius runs to the den, and he cries out in Daniel chapter 20, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions? This doesn't need to be funny, but notice what Daniel says in verse 22. It doesn't, when you read verse 22, you don't hear a panic. You don't hear stress. You don't hear worry. You literally hear, I'm good. He says, my God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me, because I was found innocent in his sight. Remember, these were ferocious lions. These were hungry lions. These were very real lions. These weren't the lions we see on TV where, the trainer or someone has kind of got them under control and on a leash and whatever else that they do. These lions were meant to devour. And here's where God's power and divine protection is displayed. God shuts the mouths of the lions. God defended his people. He defended Daniel. And here God is glorified. And notice, Daniel's deliverance is not just for Daniel. We're going to see that Daniel's deliverance even influenced the king. And because of that, it influenced the administrators and the help and ultimately the nation. The same God who saved Daniel can save us today. And we don't need to miss this. We don't need to miss this. But let's look at the global impact of Daniel's obedience. After Daniel was delivered, King Darius, he made a decree. He made it public. He said, "People of all nations and languages, tremble and fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, enduring forever." It talks about his kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall be to an end. Notice what changes happened just because of Daniel. Notice the changes that happened just because of Daniel. This is huge. The rescue of one man sparked the recognition of God and his authority across an entire kingdom. Just like with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, God's glory is revealed through the faithfulness of others under pressure. God's redemptive power is seen, and it has no limits. It has no walls. It's not just limited to us in this room. It is limited to everyone, every nation, every culture, even generations. This is not just the God of here and now. This is the God of all time. So I want to ask you this question. If God can preserve and save Daniel, do you believe that he can save you? If he can glorify himself and let himself be known through the obedience of one faithful servant, do you not think he can do it for you? I want to suggest to you Daniel's rescue foreshadowed something far greater than just saving someone from a few lions. It was foreshadowing the greatest rescue of all. And that is the rescue from Jesus Christ our Lord. Daniel did not perish from the lions because God intervened. We do not have to perish because God has intervened. He is able to deliver us. Christ, God's only Son, entered a far more dangerous den, if you will. He had to take on the cross. And the reason why it was far more dangerous, you may think he just died on the cross. We talked a little bit about what built up to the cross and the things that he went through before the cross. And the point that Stevie made is that he wasn't going to be able to take even a quarter of what he had to go through. I think that quarter's where did he go? Man. We'll wait. But he talked about, the quarter of what Jesus went through. That was probably an overestimating of our ability. Because really, we probably would have gave up just by the pressure that was going to be coming to us to deal with it. What Jesus did for us is something that we could never do. It's something that we could never handle. Jesus drank from the cup that none of us could drink. What was in that cup? It was all of the wrath of God. Comparing that to these lions, those lions, that's small compared to what Jesus went through. There's no way that we could have done that. So we've been talking about submission a lot, specifically through these last couple of months, submitting to God in our thriving in the Lord. When we submit to Him, we are not guaranteed an easy path here on this earth, but we are guaranteed His presence, His protection, His strength, and His glory. Like Daniel, we may be placed in that lion's den, even though we didn't do anything wrong. But the mouths of the enemy will be shut when God intervenes. We're going to face injustices in our lives. We're going to face mockery, and we're going to face pain. We may even face death. But there is victory beyond that because of Jesus. Where are you today? Are you dealing with the pressures of life? Are you dealing with these injustices, perhaps? Pain, mockery? Are you dealing with more than that? Are you in the lion's den right now? And you don't know how you're going to get out? I want to suggest to you, hand these things over to God. Trust in the one who is able to shut the mouths of the lion and keep 3 men from burning in the hottest of hottest fires. Daniel's deliverance it wasn't just a rescue story for him. It changed an entire kingdom. His faithfulness and people like him changed nations. God is glorified when His people trust and obey Him. His glory will be known. Submission, when we think about it, and we've talked about this a lot, but I just want to revisit the simple word of submission. Submission is not weakness. Submission is a pathway to strength. It's courage. When we're in the den, when we're in the furnace. Remember, Jesus said to deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. If you're taking up your cross, that means you are being led to a hill of Calvary. Death is going to come. There's no denying that. But like Daniel, the faithful one, his obedience was a testimony of God's glory. His obedience shined a light on Jesus to all the world. God is good. He is alive. And He is able to rescue you. So the question is who needs rescuing today? You may not be in the situation that we read about today, but we still need rescuing. Who needs rescuing from their sins? Who needs rescuing from their past? God is able to do that. John 16:33. I have said these things to you, being Jesus. I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulations, but take heart, I have overcome the world. Remember King Darius? He was troubled. He couldn't sleep. He was pacing around. He did not have peace. Jesus said, in me you may have peace. There's no doubt that we're going to have trials and tribulations. But in Him we can have peace. We can have rest. Because God is able to deliver you. Who needs help this morning? I'm going to stand right up here. Jim and Roger, would y'all mind joining me as well? And if we can help you in any way, please let it be known. Don't wait till tomorrow. Don't wait till later. Decide now. Decide now that you need to be rescued by the living God. All right? Jonathan's going to lead us in this song, and if we can help you in any way, please let it be known.